Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or EDS, is considered rare but is even more rarely diagnosed. I'm Nirvana Marie, and I have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. EDS is a genetic connective tissue disorder that can affect any and all parts of the body. So a lot of times symptoms are kind of all over the place, which oftentimes makes it very difficult to diagnose. I have spent decades going from doctor to doctor being told things like, some kids just have back pain, to it's all in your head, or the kind of catch-all of fibromyalgia. Growing up, I always felt like there was something wrong with me. Like, really wrong with me. I started having sensory issues at a very young age. The one that kind of stands out the most and still makes me cringe is my aversion to the feeling of velvet or like velour or microfiber, any of those that are super soft. They actually send like a neurological burning sensation to my brain, and I'm kind of cringing just thinking about it. And there was issues with sound and lights and, some other things. I started developing headaches before kindergarten. My mom took me to eye doctors. I had my eyes tested so many times because I would get headaches and there was just no explanation. And always had issues with my stomach. I've always been a puker. It comes in waves. It's not an all the time thing, but especially during higher stress periods or, sometimes just the weather causes my stomach to just not want to cooperate. I couldn't handle a lot of different kinds of food, and everything still today is very like kid-like. I don't do well with textural differences as far as like condiments on things. That was always a no for me, which made it very nerve-wracking to go to school and be around a lot of people when most of the time I felt nauseous or dizzy or my head just hurt. At 12, my symptoms went into hyperdrive, which didn't really bode well for socialization with my peers. I felt pretty isolated. I experienced chronic fatigue and muscle pain, as well as my joints started to kind of all snap, crackle, pop. It started really bad in my left shoulder and moved kind of over into my neck and down my back. I went to physical therapists and chiropractors and all sorts of different kind of doctors with no real answers. It was hard going from being able to do sports to not even being able to participate in gym class because I would get so dizzy and so nauseous. I had a very wide range of symptoms that were unexplainable and oftentimes completely debilitating. Symptoms just didn't get better. Like, they started to get worse. It was really hard for me to keep up. I needed things like I had 2 sets of books because having books in my backpack to take home in middle school, it was just too much for my shoulders to handle and my neck. I actually started seeing a physical therapist around that time, and I know she said that she put enough pressure on my shoulders and my neck during massage that would make a 300-pound man say uncle. It took a lot to break up the knots that were just constantly there. At 15, I was 75 pounds. Even the foods that I used to be able to inhale, like pizza, I always ate a lot of pizza, but things became very difficult to keep down, and my body slowly started to shut down. Actually, I remember the last day I was at school, I had just finished a math test, and I had started getting real dizzy, which wasn't uncommon. I had walked out to the break area between classes and just kind of collapsed. And I woke up in the nurse's office with the paramedics there, and my heart rate and my blood pressure had just my blood pressure just kind of bottomed out. I was taken to the hospital and given fluids and all that, but at that point I wasn't really allowed to go back to school. After a recent episode and getting to the right doctors, I know that it is due to a common sister illness to ehlers-danlos, a form of dysautonomia called POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So my heart was struggling and I wasn't getting enough oxygen to my brain, and all of the systems in my body were shutting down, including my stomach. I had a fast metabolism, so even if I could get things in, I wasn't actually absorbing or taking in those items. Additionally, I often threw them up because my stomach just wouldn't, I guess, couldn't handle it any longer. My body shut down on me for the first time, like completely shut down. I couldn't walk. I could barely talk. I could hear myself think what I wanted to say, and those would be in full sentences, but when they came out, it was like baby talk, which I used to have a fairly extensive vocabulary and was kind of at the height of my overachieverness with school. And so going from honors classes to being stuck at home on the floor or on the couch, because I couldn't even go be in my room in case I fell, because that happened a few times. I ended up being hospitalized at the Children's Hospital with a misdiagnosis of reflex neurovascular dystrophy. I remember they almost didn't let me on the plane because I was in a wheelchair because I couldn't walk that far, and I just got real dizzy and was like laying on the floor, which is very common for me still today, to just kind of lay on the floor. But they were worried about letting me on the plane. It was a pretty intensive program that required physical and occupational therapy every day, and then you also had exercises that you had to do. So I would walk around the Children's Hospital practicing walking with my Discman, my headphones, just trying to put one foot into each square to try to have, a little bit normal of a walking experience. I came out of rehab better. I had gained like 10 pounds, got back to school, but I still was experiencing all of these symptoms. The fatigue and the pain were very difficult, especially when none of your peers understand that. I don't know, it was really hard. There was a lot of talk of it being an attention thing, and I wish it was. I wish it was. It was a hard period of time because not only was I going through a lot of crazy things that most people don't experience, but I was doing it as a kid with peer groups that aren't very nice, and when doctors didn't even believe me, it was real hard to get kids to. I had a very wide range of symptoms that were chronic and often debilitating. It was embarrassing. There was a lot of anxiety that went with it all because I never knew what I'd be able to handle in a day. And I loved school, I loved learning, but the people were a lot harder. I get sad. Unfortunately, with EDS, there are a lot of things that can trigger symptoms to be at their maximum, and going to school, trying to keep up, was always an overachiever, so it was difficult. Things were better for a little bit after rehab, but the symptoms did start to increase, and that's just part of the game. I ended up having a lot of trouble with my hip and my SI joint, different parts of me kind of always felt like they were falling apart, and I'd have to go to a chiropractor every once in a while to get that hip adjusted. And then I just decided it didn't want to stay in place anymore. So I ended up going and getting an MRI, and a tumor was found, which is, I thought was good in a way, because I felt like that may be the explanation. That might be what was actually causing all of these symptoms, and there is my answer and my solution. I had most of the tumor removed from my spinal cord at 26. It had already started compressing, so there was damage to the cord a little bit. I woke up from surgery unable to feel waist down, which is really terrifying. It took a lot of work and a lot of rehab, but the sensation started to come back. It took a year to get to my knees, another year to get to my feet, and they're stubborn, and I've just decided not to wake up yet. I thought I would finally get better. And I did in some ways, but overall, most of my symptoms were still there and had nothing to do with the tumor. It's a lot of symptoms that the surgeon and neurologist for my tumor said that were not caused by my tumor, especially anything that was happening above where the tumor was, which was a lot of symptoms. So I just continued to have severe and unexplainable symptoms. I just kind of got used to being, for the most part, in bed or on the bathroom floor. I feel like, I've spent a third of my life in both of those places. I continued to have severe and unexplainable pain and all sorts of symptoms that nobody could give me answers to. I saw all kinds of doctors, neurologists, specialists of all sorts, and just nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. Getting a correct diagnosis took me 32 years and a random chance encounter at a music festival. I met my little blue fairy godmother at the cripple camp at Shambhala. I like the word cripple better than disabled. I just do. But there was a campsite for those who had medical issues so that we could be able to camp closer to the festival without having to do as much walking, and had a place to go and lay down and rest when we needed to. So we were at the cripple camp. After hearing my symptoms, she asked me the strangest question. She asked, "Can I pinch you?" And that made no sense, but I was like, sure, go ahead. And so she just kind of, it's hard to see probably here, but my skin kind of bounces back, real elastic-like. And she said, "I think you have Ehlers-danlos syndrome." We were, at a service range and at a festival, and I, kind of was like, oh, I'll look into that, not thinking really anything of it. And then I got back home and Googled all things EDS, and it was like mind-blowing. And I actually, when I was going over this with my best friend, I kept having to pinch her skin because I'm like, maybe it's not doing anything, because I don't have really stretchy skin. It's just slightly a little stretchy in some spots. It's more like a bounce back kind of thing. But I didn't know that wasn't normal. And so I kept having to pinch her to be like, I don't know, like, is mine different? Like, is it? I don't know. But reading the symptoms was so, I don't know, it was just like one of those things where you have finally figured out the 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 end of the mystery, you know? EDS was the answer I had been searching for my entire life. And it made my reality feel so validated. This condition made my life make so much sense. Oh, I'm gonna cry. Which also made a lot of things for my family make so much more sense. It was genetic, and you know, I had spent a lot of my life hiding most of my symptoms. I mean, it's very obvious with some of them I'm pretty vocal about, but I hid so many things from a lot of people just because I felt crazy. And there was a point in time where I convinced myself for a while that I was making it up for attention, which is like, it's ludicrous to think of that now. Like, I am so obviously EDS, and I've found my people, you know, and I want to find more, and I want to help others find that sense of relief. I don't want to hide my symptoms anymore. I want to share them. I have a list of like 8 pages of things that I thought were normal, a lot of them, because my family also shared them. And so I didn't know until I was older that a lot of these random things that my family has in common and things we do really weren't normal for other people. They were normal for zebras. I researched and was lucky to be able to find a geneticist that was like a 6-hour drive away, and at the time still taking my insurance. So my friends and I journeyed from Washington to Oregon. After less than a minute of meeting me, he knew I had dysautonomia based off of the way my pupils reacted to the light in his office. And he got me. Like, everything I said was like, yep, that makes sense, yep. And there was no resistance. I didn't have to defend myself, which I always kind of felt like I did with doctors. I had never ever been to a doctor that understood what was going on with me and had other patients that had the same things that were going on. And I had my diagnosis. I have hypermobile ehlers-danlos syndrome as well as dysautonomia, specifically postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And I finally had those gold stars on my medical chart. And not only that, but I finally had things to look for, to find support, to find help. I am finally on the right path in my medical journey. Like, I finally hit that paved road, you know, where I'm getting there. I know I still have a long way to go. I'm still recovering right now from my most recent POTS attack, which is what I'm going to call it. But I'm getting it, and life is better. If nothing else, the weight that has been taken off of me of just like feeling like what if it is in my head, you know? Like, it just took this giant weight off my chest, knowing that I wasn't crazy, that there was something wrong with me. But I mean, wrong as a not really the right word. I still have bad days, but I also have some really good days, and I'm able to manage a lot more effectively than I ever have before. I wish I would have known this when I was younger. I wish I could give this to my younger self. But I have the resources now. I have the words. I have the community. I know what I need to do. I just need to now tweak things to make them work for me personally. And I really hope that there is a younger me out there that I can reach, and just know, like, bad days happen, but there's a lot of really epic things. Zebras are special people. We're talented people. We do really cool things. I try my best to live life to the fullest, and now that I know what's wrong, I can kind of gauge things a little bit better. So that's my story. You know, I've been through a lot, but it's made me who I am. I'm definitely zebra strong. A common saying among the medical community is that when you hear hoofbeats, don't expect a zebra. But zebras are real, and there are answers for those suffering with invisible illness. Like zebras with their stripes, not everybody with ehlers-danlos experience the same symptoms, even within the same family. People don't know about EDS. Doctors oftentimes don't know about EDS, so awareness is key for getting those that are suffering a diagnosis.